Let's go.
Okay, I think we're live now. Hello, everyone. Good evening and good morning for Dawn. We're early at your time. It's evening at our time. Again, thank you for being with us. I'll give a very quick introduction about UX Breakfast. So UX Breakfast is a design community. We're based at Egypt. What we're trying to do is to bridge a gap between the academic knowledge for UX design and the practical knowledge. We try to empower designers, and we are on the mission to that. Also, I'll try to give an introduction to Don Norman. Again, you don't need an introduction, Don, but I'll try to give you one. So you're widely regarded as the father of modern user experience design, and you have this amazing landmark book, The Design of Everyday Things, that laid the foundation for more than 35 years ago, and is still required for every UX designer to read the book. Also, Don, you've co-founded the Nielsen Norman Group, the NNG organization that gave hundreds of top organizations consultations and made the products more usable, accessible, and delightful for everyone. Again, you hold the title of professor at UC San Diego's Design Lab, and you still challenge us to think beyond the interfaces. You want us to think towards systems, ethics, and real human need. So I'm deeply honored, all of us, the team, we're deeply honored to have you with us here in a discussion, not a talk, as you mentioned in your approach. Hopefully we can share a lot of insights and how to tackle society challenges. So guys, please welcome Don Norman.
Thank you, Kareem.
Thank you so much. So Don, I'd start the discussion with the first question, which is, I want to know, you've defined user experience or user-centered design long time ago, and that evolved by time. I believe right now you might have different definitions. So I want you to share with us the history of the definition of user-centered design and how it evolved to humanity-centered design.
Well, that's a long story because I've been around a long time. So the original history was that the new technologies that were coming out in the 1950s and 60s, the early days of computers, were done by technologists, engineers, and they were not very usable by people. In fact, one of the early systems had a text editor where you could work all evening to write your document or your program, and then you'd go home happy. And then you'd come back the next morning and you couldn't find it. And people would say, well, did you save it? What do you mean? If you don't save it, then it's not going to be there anymore. And that's crazy, that you could turn the system off, and if something wasn't saved, it would just say, okay, goodbye. So one of the simple changes was, first of all, why don't you just continually automatically save? Or second, when somebody tries to turn off the system, say, no, are you sure you want to do that? Do you want to save your document? If say, just say yes, and we'll save it for you. So that was sort of the very beginning. They realized that even simple things that everyday people would think about, the technologists didn't. And in fact, when they themselves made the error of losing something, everybody laughed and says, ha ha, isn't that funny? You forgot to save. So that was the very beginning of user-centered design. In some sense, it was really easy because everything was so horribly done. But over time, the group of people trying to, mostly with a psychology background and a little bit with computer science background, started to try to make systems that were easy to use. And I wrote an early book called User-Centered System Design. And it was an important title because it was one of the very first to emphasize working for the users. And it also implied the system, that we're part of a large, complex system that we should not ignore. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And also user-centered system design, is the letters are UCSD, which is the name of my university, the University of California, San Diego. Um, so I was using computers in those early days, at the very beginning, one of the very first people in psychology to have a laboratory that was controlled by computers. And I was also I was consulting for companies like Apple and the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, which actually developed many of the modern schemes that we use in today's computers. And at some point, I decided that I had worked in academics long enough, and I felt I was getting old. I was about 60, and I wanted to understand how things worked in industry. And so I retired from the university in 1993 and went up to Apple and got a job as what was called an Apple Fellow, which meant I could do anything I wanted. I had no responsibilities. And it was up to me to decide what to do. And I just looked at the Apple computers, and one thing that I liked about Apple was they had really good guidelines about how to design things that were usable. And interestingly, I discovered that those guidelines and even some of the very first programs for the Macintosh have been written by my students who had gone up. I didn't realize that my students were working at Apple. But I still thought that the ease of use was going down, was not as good as it used to be. It was going downhill, and so I complained. And Apple's response to my complaint was to say, "Okay, you're in charge of fixing it." And so I gathered a group of my friends together, and we decided what to call our group, and we decided we were the user experience architects of Apple. Now, the name user experience had actually been used by Brenda Laurel, a woman who has a theater background, and she had written the chapter in the UCSD book that I mentioned. And so I can't remember where user experience came from, but I'm sure it came from her because she used that term, but mainly because she was from theater and she was talking about how important user experience was when you're designing a theater, a play, about sound and light and etc., the sets. So we were the first group to do it in industry, and that was the beginning of user experience. But what we were talking about was the entire experience, about learning about something, about using it. So you'd walk away, you'd be actually, if you do it right, you're not even sure what people have done, because that's the whole point. You don't want the computer to get in the way. Anyway, that was my career. I was at Apple. Eventually, I left Apple. Eventually, I went through other steps and ended up starting my own company with Jacob Nielsen, the Nielsen Norman Group, which is still very active. I'm still on the board and active in it. And so I've had lots of experience now, other companies in industry, working in some startups, working for some other large companies, having some that succeeded, some that didn't. And so that was a really good education for me. In fact, the ones that did not succeed were most important in my learnings, because you learn a lot more when something goes wrong than when everything goes right. When everything goes right, you say, "Oh, isn't that good? I'm brilliant. See how easy it was." No, wasn't you. It was probably just the times were right. But when something goes wrong, you think hard about what it is. So that was the field eventually became not user-centered, but human-centered. But it's the same field. The only difference is that one word. And we developed a set of procedures, and many people around the world do it. Sometimes it's called design thinking, but we're all doing the same thing. But in 2020, I was back at the University of California, San Diego, having started a new group in design, the Design Lab. And I decided it was time for me to retire again. And so I had been appointed to be director of the Design Lab to start it. for a 5-year appointment. And on year 7 of my 5-year appointment, I told the head of the university I was going to retire again. Well, after I retired for this time, which was my 5th retirement, what should I do? And I realized that all the books I've been writing, like this one, which you know about, The Design of Everyday Things, have been very useful in making things better, and it's widely used around the world. But the world has many, many problems, and this book was not addressing those problems. So I decided to try to address the problems. But I said, I can talk about what the problems are, but the more I studied and worked and talked to many people, I didn't have to write about the problems. They're all well understood. So maybe I should write about the solutions. Well, turns out there's lots of good solutions out there. The problem is that they aren't being done. And so I decided I would write a book because I have this background. I have 2 degrees in engineering, a PhD in psychology, a lot of time working in artificial intelligence and in design in general, and a lot of experience in industry. And part of my experience in industry at Apple was to testify to the U.S. government in order to get the very first Wi-Fi banned in the United States, in order to improve television and get the high-definition television standards established. So I learned to go up and down the halls of our Congress and talk to the Congress people and talk to their assistants. And I learned a lot about how the world works in economics and in politics. And today's problems are technological, they're social, they're economic, and in the end, they always end up being political. And that's okay. Politics is good, can be good, because what the real issue in politics is you have many people coming together, all of whom are interested in what you're doing, but they come from different points of view with different backgrounds. And so from their point of view, they will criticize what you've done. And usually these criticisms are all contradictory, which means it's difficult to work. But if you realize that from each person's point of view, what they are saying is true, that's a way of beginning to understand how you can maybe reach a compromise, get people to understand the other point of view. They may not agree with it, but that way they can understand that the other person is at least thinking logically from what their background is. So I think that many designers hate politics, and they also hate administration. And what that does is it weakens the power of design. When I ask people, people complain to me that when they work in a company, the company doesn't listen to the designers. The company instead tells designers what to do. And designers say, why don't you ask us what we should be doing and building? Because we have really good ideas. And I asked them, well, how do you try to convince your management? Well, we show them how good we are. We show them the letters of appreciation. We show them the prizes we've won. And we show them mock-ups, drawings of what we would like to do. And I say, well, if you told that to me as an executive, I would say, yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that. We know you're good. That's why we hired you. But now, excuse me, I have work to do. Because we tell people when you design, the whole point of human-centered design is understand the people you're designing for, talk their language. Well, one of the people you're designing for is the people you work for. So you learn to talk their language, and their language is usually costs, schedule, sales, spreadsheets. So if you have a new idea for a new project, a new product that you think would be really wonderful for the company, you have to convince them by telling them how many they will sell or what good it will do. And my designer friends say, ooh, how do you know that? If it's never been built, we can't tell them how many will be sold. And I say, yes, you can. That's what marketing people do all the time. And they make you add features to your designs that you may not even approve of, but they convince management. So make friends with marketing. Ask them how they do it. And the answer is, well, they lie. They make up the numbers. But the executives are not dumb. They used to do that themselves. They know you made up the numbers because there's no other choice. So they will say, where did you get the numbers from? What were your assumptions? Is it really are those reasonable numbers? So not everybody in the design world has to become good at doing this. But if you want to have a say and power, then you have to learn to speak the language of power. A few of you. That's why you can get a master's degree in business, or maybe you can just learn business by working with the design, work with marketing, work with supply chain, work with manufacturing, work with sales, understand their issues. So anyway, I finally put all that together in this new book. So I said the design of everyday things is important, but it's wrong. And what's wrong about it? Nothing. There's nothing wrong in the book. I still believe it. I teach it. What's wrong is what is not in the book. And what is not in the book, well, the title of this book is Designed for a Better World, Meaningful, Sustainable, Humanity-Centered. Meaningful, we're ruled by the economists who measure everything in money and who make all these wonderful mathematical predictions, which are almost always wrong. Because everybody looks at the mathematics and is very impressed, but nobody asks what assumptions did you make in the beginning. And they don't understand people. And so the models don't understand people, but isn't economics really about people? And so it's time we change how we do measurement. They measure things that you can't measure, so they measure something they know how to measure and then name it by what they care about. It's not the same thing as measuring what you care about. Psychologists know how to measure a lot of those things that economists can't measure. And second, sustainable. We're destroying the planet because, first of all, we rip it apart to get to manufacture things, and then to get the materials out of the ground. And second of all, we make everything, many uses of plastics, and for that matter, even the materials that can't be reused. We put the materials together so they can't be taken apart. And so we're not designing in a sustainable way, and the world is filled with waste. The air is filled with poisonous air. The water is filled with poison. And the ground is being destroyed. So we have to change that. And there are ways of changing it. So, for example, there's something called the circular economy, which is what nature does. When nature has a plant, the plant grows, and eventually the plant dies. But when it dies, it becomes fertilizer for the next plants. We need to be able to reuse everything in some sense like nature does. So nothing gets wasted. Now, if you're working for a company and you say, oh, look at the harm we're doing with getting those wonderful materials that we use, or that we're encouraging people to buy a new product every couple of years and we just throw away the old ones into trash heaps, that's wrong. That won't convince anybody. The company does not want to know what's wrong. It's not because they don't need to know. The good executives want to know what's wrong. But what they really want to know is what they should be doing instead. Now, you cannot say the solution is the circular economy, because they will say, look, we make our money selling products. And what you're trying to tell me is make the products last longer so people don't buy them, as many of them. So it's easier to repair and easier to continue and easier to update. So we'll go out of business. So you have to have an answer to that. And you have to have an answer. It means you have to understand business, because it has to be a business answer. There are answers, and most of them have to do with, let's not just sell a product, let's sell a service. And what's a service? Well, everything's a service. When you sell a camera, oh, it's nice, it's a wonderful camera, but actually the camera offers a service, namely your enjoyment of the photographs that you've taken. And what about your mobile phone? Well, it offers a service. First of all, so you can talk to many people and you can text to many people. But nowadays, the phones are really small computers. And so it allows you to do many, many things on the phone. It's not the phone that's really you're getting. What you really want is the way you interact. But look how you get a phone. You think you buy the phone. You don't. Most people go to the telephone store, the telephone company store, and they will show you the phones that they have, and you decide which one you want, and then they ask you to pay some money every month. Because some of that is for the phone, some of that is for the internet service or the telephone service, but That's a service, and you're paying for it every month. They just don't want to call it a service. They make believe they're selling you the phone. But they'll take care of it. If the phone breaks, you can go back and give it to them, and they will take care of fixing it. Well, we need to do that in more industries. We need to do that in the automobile industry and in making the refrigerators, the air conditioners, all the other things that's in our homes, and reuse the parts. No waste. That was a long story.
That
As I
was very
said,
nice story. Yeah, it was a very nice story. I really like the evolvement of the term of user centered design or user experience overall, and then over time formulating it to be like to focus more on humanity, on different aspects rather than the product.
so
Uh,
what we need to do is focus on, instead of emphasizing profits and schedule, we should emphasize quality of life. And that when we are designing for society so that a group doesn't have enough clean water or poor education or poor access to education or transportation, all of these things, we don't go in and say, as designers, and say, oh, we'll go live with you for a week or two and understand your problems and come back and take up a solution and then give it to you. No, people don't like to be told what to do. So what you have to do is involve them. And humanity-centered design means that you don't design for people. You design with them. They should be a member of your design team. And by the way, that's not easy, because when you work with a community, they love the fact that they're going to help decide what to do, but it will turn out they can't agree. They have many, many different ideas. So it's going to be difficult to get them together and all agree upon what to do. And that's a new component. That will be a new skill that designers will have to learn.
yeah, to engage with people, also get them on board during the design process. So instead of
Well, actually, I put it the other way. They're going to let you be on board.
yeah, that's true, to their community, to their context.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really true. Again, you've said a point which is really critical, that designers right now are being told what to do, and most of them struggle to validate what they can offer to help humanity, to help business. So we have also a question from someone that who is saying that we should we learn business instead of being user advocates?
Yes, absolutely. It should be a small part of every design education. Um, Small part, because you do want to learn design skills. We need good designers, but you also need to understand the environment in which you're working. We have very few designers in the world who are at the very top of a company, a large company. In small companies, yes, but in large companies, very few. The title at least in the western part of the world, is chief design officer. Uh, there's a so-called C-suite, the chief design officer, the chief finance officer, the chief product officer, and you want to be one of those, because that's where you have to be. And there you have to act not as a designer, you have to act as a company person to try to understand what's better for the company. So you have to understand how the company works and how it gets its money and how it spends its money, how it employs people, etc., how it sells, how it distributes its information and its products. Uh, but the fact that you're a designer means you're going to have different ways of thinking. And one of the nice things about design is we emphasize creativity and thinking in a different way. And when people have a problem, one of the first things I do when I'm asked to solve a problem is I say, let's rethink the problem. Almost always a problem that we're asked to solve is not the real problem. It's the symptoms. And so one of the things that we learn is let's understand what underneath the symptoms and solve the causes. And so we can add a lot of value as in the executive team, but we have to learn the language of executives. And so at the very least in design education, there ought to be a brief introduction to these issues so that the people who feel they're interested in that can go on and learn more about this. But again, we still need people who are really great designers. So I don't want to substitute business training for design training. Simply make sure people understand it.
Yeah, to speak the language, to understand the fundamentals at least. So
I
you've
learned it
mentioned,
the hard way. I learned it the hard way by being in a company as an academic, thinking I knew all the answers. And it turns out all the answers I knew, nobody cared about. But they had really good questions. And so they asked me for the answers to their good questions. And I would say, oh, we've never studied that. And I began to realize that what academics study is not necessarily what the world needs. And when you're out in the world, a lot of things that you understand don't work in the world because in the laboratory, in the university, it's all very nice and simple and controlled. In the world, all sorts of weird things happen, which makes your wonderful idea doesn't work. And designers, engineers often say, well, the people ruin it. They don't use it right. Why are people so stupid? And I say, they're not stupid. Uh, but you have to design for those people, not the way you want them to be. But people aren't logical, they say. And I say, that's correct. People aren't logic. Logic, by the way, has nothing to do with how people think. Logic was invented by philosophers and mathematicians. So understand real people, understand the real world.
yeah. Yeah, thank you, Don, for sharing this with us. You've mentioned that the C-suite level, that there at the western part of the world there is this title, the Chief Design Officer. At our side of the world, this title rarely appears in the company hierarchy, and we usually designers report to the CPO, the Chief Product Officer. So do you think this would affect the way the designer operates, the way that he has the chance to understand more about the business, the users, or do you think it's yeah, I want to know what's your take on that.
Yes, it absolutely will change things because for once you'll be equal. So that happened with me at Apple because for a while I really didn't understand business, but I was learning it the hard way. But I also, because I was also friends with all the other executives, I would ask them to help me learn what I needed to know. And so eventually I became a vice president. And at that time, we didn't have chief levels, no C-suite. So therefore, I was at the very top. I reported to the head of the company, the chief executive officer, and I had a say in what we were doing. And that made a big difference. Now, Apple was a special company where Apple understood the importance of design. But this happens at other companies where they understand that. But the way they understand it is it has to come from the designers themselves who communicate. Because if you look at the senior officers, they're people. So one of the tricks that my friends at Apple did was we knew that the first the first CEO I worked for was named John Scully. And people knew that usually at 6 o'clock in the morning, he would show up at the gym and do exercises. And so if you really wanted to talk to the CEO, you simply showed up at the gym and did your exercises next to him. And then it was easy to talk to him. And it was informal, but that's how you got to actually get your ideas to the chief executive. And it also, the chief executive at that point would also tell you why your ideas wouldn't work in the company. Great idea, but here's what you ought to think about. And so one way to do this is not just through official channels, but make friends with the other groups.
Yeah, to connect with other departments. That's really insightful. And we usually miss that. We usually make friends with tech teams, developers, software engineers, and we do make connections with other designers. But most of the time, we need to connect with other departments. I think
By the way,
the connection.
engineers have the same problem. Engineers have to do what they're told. So how come engineers, though, some of them become chief product officers and become chief executive officer? So talk to engineers about how they go up. They say, well, we go in and get a business degree. Well, I asked one of my designers about that. He said, I asked him, well, how do you think engineers go up? And he said, well, they will go off and get business degrees. And I said, yeah, so doesn't that teach you something? And maybe you should too.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So to get promoted, we'll need to expand the knowledge base, not just in design, in business, and in connecting with
Yeah, because
people.
as long as you stay an engineer or a designer, then they like you, they hire you, they pay you, but they keep you in engineering or in design, and they don't listen to what you say. And so do that, you have to know more. You have to add more to the company because they're correct. The company's correct. Until you understand how the company works, your ideas really are not useful. Now, what marketing usually goes up to the top because actually most marketing people are trained in business schools. So already have that background.
Yeah, that's really helpful. One more thing that you've said, Don, I want to dig deeper in, that designers need to understand more about the business, understand more about the board of the company, how does they work, and also understand more about the context and the people they're designing for. And the challenge they face most probably is the time constraint. So as you really know that business always have tight timelines, tight schedules. They have shortened budget in terms of design. So how do you think designers can overcome this?
Well, you have to learn to work with it. The field of design research, the way we teach design, the double diamond uh, that's in this book, um, doesn't work in practice. It's a really good way of teaching because you explain how you can learn about the real needs of the people and then how you design for it, etc. But when you're working as a designer, the company says, okay, here's what we have to do now. And you say, oh, wonderful. I'll get the design researchers team to go out and study what is really needed. And you will be told, oh, well, we can't. We don't have enough time or budget for it. And you explain why that's essential. And they say, we agree with you. It's absolutely essential, but we don't have time right now, or it's not in the budget. Norman's law is that the day the team is put together, it's over its budget and it's behind schedule. And so
Yeah,
you have to realize that. So you don't argue with the people, but what you have to do is make sure your design team has a group of people who are doing design research all the time. Because you work for the company, you know the sorts of things the company is doing or might actually do in the future. And so now when they say, here's what we're going to be doing, the design research is already done. And so you can now say, oh, good, here's what we need to do in making this product. But eventually you can take that design research and make a proposal to management about what the next product ought to be. Our people in the field say, here's a problem people are having, and we are in a good position to solve it. So if we did this new product, look, and etc. You explain the great number of sales and how they'll save money because people won't call up for help all the time and how etc. And once again, here's where you use your marketing skills to make a spreadsheet.
yeah, that's true. One pushback that is usually is being said these days, Don, is uh, is from boards or business people to designers, that you can use AI to make your work faster, to get a more efficient output. You can use AI. The work you can do in 10 days can be done in like 3 hours.
Yep. That's all the hype. It's all the exaggeration from the AI companies. Look,
Yeah,
we are in the middle of a number of technological revolutions. And one of them is AI. The newer, actually, AI has been around for 20, 30 years, but in the new large language models, and which can actually, among the things they're really good at is computer code. But they still don't understand people, and they may not understand the business either. But yes, if you can tell them exactly what you want coded, they will do a good job. But think about it. That makes your job easier. So I'm saying that AI is it's a new way of working because it's not like a new tool. When new tools came in, we had to learn how to use the tool, and quite often it did make our work faster and better. I mean, you all use computers to do your drawings and to do your prototypes and so on. Um, and this is going to be the different kind of tool, though, because it's more like a collaborator. Because you work together with the AI, and it gives you ideas, and you give it ideas, and you have to be careful about it, but um, because sometimes what it tells you is nonsense, and you have to be able to distinguish it because it doesn't really understand what it's doing, although it's starting to get better and better. Every month, these AI systems get more and more powerful, but you will lose your job if you don't understand AI. But if you start practicing with AI and using it for everyday things, and then also using it for the work you're doing, you will discover where it's useful. And but you'll also discover where the designer skills are still essential, even more essential. And the fact that it can make you more efficient means, oh, I can now do the things I've always wanted to do, but it took too long, so we could never develop it. And now you might be able to develop these great ideas in less time. So what I say is don't be afraid of AI, but actually master it and use it. Now you have to keep doing it because it's changing all the time, getting better and more powerful and different kinds of tools. But that's going to be a real benefit to it. Now, people are often proud of their drawing skills. And a lot of the details of what we learn in school, and a lot of the time learning in school is drawing and this, that, and the other. Those will go away because the machine they can draw pictures better than you can. And but trying to convince it to draw exactly what you're trying to think about, that can take hours or even days. Sure, it can draw it in 30 seconds, but it might take you 3 or 4 days of going back and forth, say, that's not right. No, no, try doing this, try changing that to learn how to do it. And that's the skill of a designer. So we're going to be needed in many ways more than ever because if the engineers try to design something without the designers, oh, sure, it might work, but it won't be usable by anybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's 100%. So people are just their fear of losing their jobs to AI. But you've said it. You've made it clear that if you do not master AI, you'll get replaced by another person that who can master AI.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so one more thing that you've mentioned about your new book, Don, that it helps designer to focus more on humanity and design meaningful, sustainable experiences. Most of the time, it's hard for designers because they're most of the time like synced in systematic designs in software, in digital apps, and they cannot consider the context, the environment, other issues that are in the world. How would you advise those designers to just widen their vision and see the society problems that we're facing these days, or other issues that they can help in?
It's a difficult problem because depending upon the company you're working in many companies, the executives are also fully aware of the problems in the world. It's hard not to be aware of it. And actually, in the Middle East, you're in the middle of some of the biggest problems. Uh, but most people they see the problems, but they're not sure what they can do about it. And so, I think the best way is for designers to try to use creativity in coming up with possible solutions that that is good for the company as well. And that means, though, you have to form committees. You have to form working relationships with other divisions of the company because it can't come from design alone. You have to bring in the finance people. You have to bring in the marketing people. You have to bring in at least one of the executives or become one yourself. And because it has to be a team effort, and everybody has to work together because a lot of these problems are very difficult. In fact, they're all the ones that are very difficult. And you can't solve it overnight, and it's not easy to solve, and it requires sometimes changing what the company does. And that change has to therefore take place over time. Uh, for example, we pollute the skies because we burn coal and oil to make electricity. And people say, well, we should use wind and sun or hydroelectric or nuclear power. But all of these take years and years to develop. So meanwhile, we still need the energy. And so even though a lot of people are working to get much better clean energy, it can take 5 to 10 years. But because it does take time, that's why it's extremely important to start now, immediately. Um, don't be put off because it takes time. But if you wait, then it's going to take even longer. But that means you have to bring together the many different divisions of a company who can answer the questions about, well, how does a company stay in business in doing this? Or what is the cost to the company? What is the cost if we don't do anything? What is the cost if we do what you suggest? These are not easy problems.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, every important problem in the world is a difficult problem. Why not? And I believe design is one of the few skills that actually can help solve these problems.
Yeah. Don, is that the reason you've created the Don Norman Design Award, just to open the space for designers to approach those problems?
Yes. So in the design, what we reward early career people. To people, I don't care what your training is. I care what you do. Have you done something that really helps people? And you have to have some evidence. And you have to be. This only has to be your first, second, third. That's it. Time that you're trying to do it because it's hard. Um, and so that's been very rewarding. We get people from all over the world, including Egypt, uh, who apply. We have um, hundreds of applications from all around the world. We have an advisory committee that comes from how many different nations, countries? Uh, we have 29 advisors from 18 countries, 14 time zones. And we are really trying to expand this, but we also are rewarding educational institutions that teach people that do this. And there we say, we want to know that you're really doing a good job. And so the best way is tell us the names of your graduates who are working for society. And then we're also starting to now encourage companies to encourage their employees or to fund other people to do this kind of work. And we have a list of companies we're starting to support and recognize. And um, we're working hard. We've just had a whole group of different meetings about how we can. The beginning is going to be education. The more it's education where you can spread the ideas faster, and eventually these people do become senior executives in companies. But we also want to treat the people who are already working. And so we're trying to expand our efforts. But there is a problem, is that many people read the books or read about DNDA, the Don Norman Design Award, and Summit. The annual meetings where we bring people together so they can learn from each other. And I asked the larger organizations like the Aga Khan Foundation to give a talk not about the wonderful work they've done. I want them to give a talk about, here's a project we did and it failed. Because I want people starting out to realize that even experienced groups can fail because these are hard problems. And when you say I failed, you also have to say, and here's what we learned from it, and here's where the difficulties came in, and here's how actually we failed, but we managed to overcome it by doing the following. And so that's very important. But the real difficulty I face is students read this and say, oh, that's wonderful, that's the work I want to do. But doing good for the world doesn't pay off. Companies make money by selling products. doing good for the world, a new sewer system, a new water system, a new power system, costs money. And so there are very few jobs that are available. And that has to change too. So I'm working on all these. I'm trying to bring in partners from India, from Asia, um, from Europe, from Africa. And yes, we're talking to some countries in the Middle East as well.
Yeah, that's very nice news. Hopefully, we can contribute within the Don Norman Design Award, because I believe there are a lot of problems that needs to be solved. It takes time, it takes effort, but I believe if we start now, everything on the long term would be better. So I take one question that might not be related to DNDA, but it's from one of the audience. He's asking, so what is your advice for a designer who have an intention to publish a book?
Encouragement. But yes, what you have to do is though think hard about your audience, because writing is actually a kind of design. And just like designers have to think hard about who are they designing for, when you're writing a book, make sure you think about who you're writing for. And if you're going to be writing for academic audience, the most successful books are the ones that get used as textbooks. So you have to think of something that could be a textbook. Or if you want to write for practicing designers, again, you'll have to be giving more practical advice. Whereas for the academic world, you can be giving advice that's valuable in the future. But for people who are working, if you're writing a book, then it has to be stuff that they can use today. And if you want to hit the management and tell the world about why design is important, and design is not just making something look beautiful, it's actually making the world better and making life better, then you have to understand how best to address that audience. It's a popular audience, and each of these requires different kinds of language and different ways of discussing things. So the best way to learn about this is look at the books that you enjoy reading, and look at the books that people in your target area enjoy reading, and see how you can learn how they structure it. But I encourage you, we need more books. We need more books, not just from the United States or from Europe uh, or from the major developed countries. We need more books from places like Egypt. And so, yes, please get to work on it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll try to empower him as much as we can. We'll get him on our mission.
Yep.
Again, Don, I know we're running out of time, so I'd leave you with this one last.
So I just want to say that speaking of Egypt, Sahar Atia, who's a professor of architecture at Cairo University, is one of our advisors. So we have not neglected Egypt.
I would, if you please send me her name over our chat, that would be great. So we can connect with her and see how we can just open the channel between DNDA and Egypt. We have a lot of designers that were really seeking this experience.
I'm trying to find out where I stick my. Okay. Where do I put the input? I'm into meeting chat.
Yeah, it's fine. You can share it over email. I'll publish it with people.
Well, it's go to dnda.design.
Yeah.
/Sahar SAHAR dash Attia ATTIA. How come I can't use design? I mean, what's the matter with this design that I can't figure out how to enter something? I hit chat. Chat is only available during the meeting. Okay.
I think we are in the meeting.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, that might be a bug or something. Maybe
Okay,
we
actually,
can.
somebody has posted it in chat, so there it is.
Yeah, cool. That's very nice. We'll connect with her and see
It
how
was
can we.
it was done by Anil Kripalani. Anil is one of our members of the board of directors and former CEO of DNDA.
Yes. Cool. Thank you so much, Don, for sharing this with us, and it's really inspiring. We would connect with Sahar to see how can we collaborate
Okay.
and build more connections
I
with
still
DND.
have 10. I told you I have to leave on time, but I still have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not wasting this. I would ask you for like what is the most important advice that you'd give to designers for the upcoming 5 years?
For the upcoming
5
what?
years.
5 years.
Yeah.
I think that you should first of all keep abreast of what is happening in the world, um, especially in the Middle East, because that's where most of you are located, maybe all of you. And think about the opportunities that you can think of where designers can contribute. And sometimes that will be in organizations outside of your work, because I'm sure there are lots of nonprofits and small groups organized to do work. And at the same time, that will actually give you a lot of experience in addressing some of the problems in your country. And at the same time, I think you should also be thinking about the points I made about understanding business models and the economics of a company. Because if you want to change the way the company is working, you have to actually be able to present a good proposal about not only this is a better thing for the world, but this is good for your company. Um, if you switch to the circular economy, which is I urge everybody in the world to do that, that switch is difficult for the reasons I've already mentioned. Namely, it changes the way that a company is working. Uh, but nonetheless, and it may cost money to do the switch, even though you probably will save money later on. So you have to be able to figure out how you convince people to do that, and maybe the ways that you convince them to do very small efforts. I point out that this is already happening in the world. I have a laser printer made by Canon, the Japanese company. Now, I don't know what happens when the laser printer is out of date, but the laser printer can last 10 years. But I'm always running out of cartridges, toner. But what Canon says is, buy your new cartridge from us. We'll give it to you in a box. Take the new cartridge out and put the old cartridge into this box. And then here's an address, and we'll give you a sticker you can put around the box, which is free postage. You mail it back to us, and we will promise that we will reuse everything. The old toner that is no longer valuable, it's really good for making highways and for fertilizer and for other purposes. And all the metal parts and the other parts, we will either clean it and reuse it, or if necessary, we can melt it down and make it into new parts, so we don't waste anything. Now, that's not for the entire product, but it's a beginning. And as more and more companies can do this, even in small parts of their process, then they're on their way. And so it's your job to find out what the opportunities are. And also, as I said before, make friends with other people in your company so you can work together. Make friends with ones who agree with the need, but also with trying to figure out ways that the company can adopt and still survive. And better yet, they can start bragging about the work they're doing, which may even help them.
Yeah, that's really very great advice. I
But
think if we stick.
once it's discovered that you have been helping the company do this work and so on, you might get promoted to be. Unfortunately, you might get promoted maybe to head the design department, but no, to some other division where you're no longer a designer. And that can be a good thing. Not for everybody, But some of you who really like to see what's going on and have a say, that could be wonderful.
Nice, nice. That's very nice advice. Again, if we stick to this, I think I believe we'll be great people. But I want to ask a question. What did you mean by you can evolve to another division, like product management, business?
Because if the easiest division to go into is more the technology division, the product division, because that's what you already understand. Now, they may be most engineers. There'll be mechanical engineers, and but so if you're an industrial designer, working with mechanical engineers is easier. Otherwise, you have to work with the programmers. You might also get work in the supply chain problem. Where are the supplies coming from? And can we maybe change some of the supplies? And the way you change that is, well, let's rethink the design. Maybe we can design using different materials or sourcing from a different place. And again, that's where it helps to talk to the supply chain people and the engineers. Because if the engineers say, yeah, those new materials look like they could be very effective, then good. So again, working with the other divisions, they're people. So the best way is to make friends with them over the bar, drinking or playing sports together or something, because it's informal groups where you form the friendships that then become very important in making changes.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really pleased, Don, to be here with you and the team and everyone else. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for making this session happen. Hopefully, we can meet again, maybe in Singapore, maybe another time with the audience. But again, what you've said today is really valuable. It really inspired every one of us to rethink the way we're doing things, to get engaged with people more as people instead of work colleagues. I think this will help a lot. And the circular economy is the new terminology that I think everyone will be Googling tonight.
Yeah, and again, this book gives you an introduction and references to a lot of these things. I spent a lot of time on the circular economy in the book, but yes, it's easy to find. Actually, Googling is I don't Google anymore because nowadays when I type something in, it goes directly to my AI, and I get really good answers, very valuable, useful answers.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Google is technology where what you were doing, you were searching for a website that you hoped had the answer that you cared about. But in today's technology, and this is important because it's changing what you designed for, that in today's technology, you ask the question that you care about. You give the whole reason. You can give a whole paragraph saying, look, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I need the answer. Here's my problem. And can you help me understand it better? Or can you give me some references? Or can you tell me some companies that work in this area? And it will come back with a really nice essay giving you some answers. Now, some of the answers may be wrong, but it's because you have a really good assistant who's trying hard to help you, but doesn't know as much as they think they do. And so there will be useful information, but you have to read it with some care and check out the references. But it's a new way of working. But let me say also, when we're starting to design things that are going to be used by people, more and more, we're going to design it not by finding the menu and selecting it, or not by typing a command, but by explaining what it is we want you to do. I want you to change the temperature. It gets too hot in the day, and it's too cold at night. So can you change the thermostat to lower it a little bit in daytime? And when I go to bed, would you then change it to et cetera, et cetera? Today, if you have a thermostat in a home where you actually have air conditioning and heating, you probably don't need heating, but it's very difficult to work these thermostats. They're not easy. in part because they try to save money, and so they make it very difficult to change and to program. But we soon will actually be able to talk to it. But again, who's going to teach it, and who's going to decide what language to use and how to specify it? Designers. Don't let the engineers do it. They're clueless about people. Designers.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Don. Yeah, we do design things, and we should take care of the world. I believe this is our mission as designers, also to connect with people as people.
Yeah, so I do have to leave because I have to catch an airplane because I'm going to spend the rest of the day talking to a company that we're starting to work with. In fact, they're going to give one of the talks in our summit in Singapore, and we want to join forces with them to help us spread the word more. And they're from a different area. They are from um, basically it's city design. How do you design a city so that we can have less automobiles and more bicycles and more walking, and make it friendly and make it better for cities? And they've done wonderful work around the world, and so we are partnering with them. So we're trying
Yeah,
to expand all the work that we are doing. And so, as I said, I have to leave now to catch a car to take me to the airport, to take me to Berkeley, California.
yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Don.
Don.
Thank you.
Wish you best of luck.
So thank you, everybody.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice
Bye.
one.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The recording will be available hopefully soon. See you soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye.